37 years after its release, Dirty Dancing still has a lot of us in a chokehold. The beloved 1987 movie made Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey into superstars. But did you know that it was almost never released? That's right, the most iconic romance movie of the 80s was nearly scrapped, and the reasons why, along with several unnoticed scenes from the movie, are hard to believe. Luckily, we're here to break everything down and expose all the unnoticed secrets of the hidden Dirty Dancing scenes. Movie title: if there's one thing record-breaking movies have in common, it's that there's usually a bit of a squabble concerning the title. Take, for instance, the issues with the title change for the 1990 movie Pretty Woman, which would have otherwise been called $3,000. But before Richard Gere and Julia Roberts graced our screens and captured our hearts with their performance, there was Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey in Dirty Dancing. At the time of the movie's release back in the late 1980s, things like on-screen nudity and scandalous titles were a big deal. Naturally, producers tried to stray away from any issues that might rub the general public the wrong way. However, the producers of the movie didn't realize that the title Dirty Dancing was a wee bit scandalous. In fact, it became such a big deal, leading censorship officers to hesitate as they initially believed it was an X-rated movie. The movie had been based upon the real-life occurrences of the screenwriter, Eleanor Bergstein, and she later shared in an interview that authorities at the Canadian border had held up the dailies because they thought it was an X-rated film. The studio was still pretty adamant about what they wanted the title to be, and thus, Dirty Dancing was retained. Patrick Swayze, on the other hand, wasn't too happy with this outcome. According to him, he had despised the film's name and even fought to have it not be called that. He shared his grievances during a 1987 interview with reporter Bobby Wygant, where he admitted that he absolutely hated the Dirty Dancing title and would rather it was called something else. He added that that was what the studio went with, and unfortunately, they were stuck publicizing a movie with a title the actors didn't even like. Well, we're not sure how to feel about Patrick's grievances considering the other title option was I Was a Teenage Mambo Queen. So, yeah, let's just thank goodness they finally decided upon the original title. The title squabble was not the only threat to the Dirty Dancing movie that we all know and love, as there were more radical changes that would have altered the movie beyond recognition. And this was perhaps the biggest one. Other actors, it's not unusual to hear that a role almost went to another actor. But when said role brings in millions of dollars and skyrockets an actor to overwhelming popularity, people can't help but wonder who might have missed their chance to become the next big thing on TV. The role of the brooding dance instructor, Johnny Castle, in Dirty Dancing is a prime example. Actors like Billy Zane, Benicio del Toro, and Val Kilmer were all considered before Patrick was cast in the role that would make him a superstar. Interestingly, Patrick had extensively trained at the Harkness and Joffrey ballet schools, making him almost a shoo-in for the role. Still, he had problems on his own that might have hindered the casting process. In fact, the film almost didn't include Patrick at all, as it was confirmed when filming began that Billy Zane was going to play Johnny. Eventually, he had to be let go when the producers noticed he had no chemistry with Jennifer Grey. It is also said that the director remained adamant that they choose dancers, such as Patrick, who could also act because he didn't want to have to use the stand-in method. Similarly, before Jennifer herself was cast as Baby, actresses such as Sarah Jessica Parker and Winona Ryder auditioned for the part. Jennifer later revealed that she was paid $50,000 for the film, a modest sum considering the movie's eventual success. Additionally, despite her previous experience working with Patrick in Red Dawn, Jennifer, who, unlike her co-star, was not a trained dancer, admitted she was terrified to partner with him. She shared this in a 2016 interview where she said Patrick was a great dancer and he was fearless. In her words, his fearlessness combined with my fearfulness, like his lack of Jewishness and my super Jewishness, created a dynamic that was almost like a marriage of opposites. He'd do anything, and I'd be scared to do anything. Seeing how they got along in the movie, one would never imagine that there was initially tension between the two leads, and they often clashed due to their different approaches to acting. Patrick himself described these early conflicts in his 2009 autobiography, The Time of My Life. He wrote that Jennifer seemed particularly emotional, sometimes bursting into tears if someone criticized her. Other times, she slipped into silly moods, forcing them to do scenes over and over again when she'd start laughing. This tension was evident on set, and the filmmakers had to work hard to keep the chemistry between the characters alive despite the off-screen friction. Yet, it was this very tension that contributed to the palpable on-screen chemistry that audiences loved. The push and pull between Patrick's confidence and Jennifer's vulnerability added depth to their characters' relationship, making their eventual connection all the more compelling. Unexpectedly, Dirty Dancing became a massive hit, and both actors' performances were widely acclaimed, with Patrick's portrayal of Johnny Castle turning him into a heartthrob and a household name, and Jennifer's role as Baby becoming iconic. In hindsight, the casting choices and the behind-the-scenes dynamics seem almost serendipitous. So much so that lovers of the film can't even imagine other actors embodying the roles as much as the original duo. To many, it's a fascinating reminder of how the right combination of talent, timing, and even tension can create cinematic history. Unscripted scenes, there's no denying that from the beginning till its final credits, Dirty Dancing leaves audiences with a sense of joy and nostalgia. However, it is now common knowledge that the atmosphere behind the scenes was very different. We've already established that the main actors had a bit of a problem getting along in the beginning, but as a result of this and other issues, the filming process was fraught with challenges. Case in point, one of the most beloved moments in the film is the musical montage where Johnny and Baby practice the mambo for their big performance, and Johnny ends up trailing his fingers down Baby's arm. This scene, filled with Baby's uncontrollable giggles and Johnny's mounting frustration, was entirely unplanned. Shocking, right? In reality, the giggles were actually all Jennifer, as she was genuinely ticklish. Now, you might be wondering if Patrick's ensuing irritation was also real, and the answer is yes. He was in reality genuinely upset by Jennifer's spontaneous laughter. According to Linda Gottlieb, the producer, they didn't even remember they had that footage because they eventually shot the scene where Jennifer didn't laugh. It was only when they were in the editing room that their dance editor found the scene we all know and love. Linda shared that when they initially saw it, they burst out laughing, leading them to show the scene to Jennifer and Patrick, who also burst out laughing when they saw it for the first time. All of the laughter wasn't just because the scene was cute and fun, but because they'd all completely forgotten that this had even happened. Eventually, they thought it was so funny that they decided to use it instead, and voila, it became one of the movie's most memorable scenes.